I want to start with a number, 46%. That is the proportion of adults over the age of 65 who report getting up 2 or more times every single night to urinate, nearly half. And when you ask those same people how they feel, not just about their sleep, but about their health, their energy, their ability to think clearly and move safely, the answers are remarkably consistent: exhausted, frustrated, resigned. Because at some point, someone in a white coat told them this was just what getting older feels like, and they believed it. I am Dr. Rachel Storms, and I am here today to tell you that what I just described is common, but it is not inevitable. And the difference between those two words is the entire reason you are watching this video. In the next 25 minutes, I am going to walk you through 3 specific, science-backed habits that directly address nighttime urination in older adults. Not vague lifestyle advice, not drink more water, not just see your doctor. 3 concrete, implementable changes with clear physiological explanations for why each one works. I will tell you now that the third habit is the one that surprises people the most, and it is the one that the overwhelming majority of seniors are doing completely backwards. Stay with me through the whole video because the third habit builds on the first 2 and loses most of its effectiveness without that context. But before we get into the habits, I want to spend a few minutes on what is actually happening in your body when this problem occurs, because understanding the mechanism is what makes the solutions make sense, rather than just feel like another list of things to try. The medical term for waking to urinate at night is nocturia, and I want to be clear about something important right at the start. Nocturia is not a bladder problem. It is not a prostate problem, although prostate issues can contribute in men. At its core, in most adults over 65, nocturia is a fluid distribution problem. It is a timing problem. It is a hormonal problem. And in many cases, it is a problem that responds extraordinarily well to behavioral interventions, meaning changes in what you do and when you do it, precisely because those interventions address the actual mechanisms rather than trying to override them with medication. Here is what is happening. Over the course of the day, when most of us are upright and active, gravity pulls fluid downward into the tissues of the lower legs and ankles. This is especially true if you have any degree of venous insufficiency, meaning your leg veins do not pump blood back upward quite as efficiently as they once did, which is extremely common after 65. That fluid pools in your lower extremities throughout the day. You might notice it as mild swelling around your ankles by late afternoon. You might not notice it at all, but it is there. Now, the moment you lie down and your legs come to the same level as your heart and kidneys, gravity stops holding that fluid in your legs. It redistributes. It moves into your circulation. Your kidneys, doing exactly what they are designed to do, process this newly arrived fluid and send it to your bladder. This process begins within 20 to 30 minutes of lying down and can continue for 2 to 3 hours. If you went to bed at 10 and your kidneys are processing redistributed fluid until midnight or 1 in the morning, your bladder is going to fill. And when your bladder fills past a certain threshold, you are going to wake up. In younger adults, ADH production increases naturally at night, which is why a healthy 25-year-old can sleep 8 hours without a bathroom trip. The kidneys slow down because ADH tells them to. In older adults, this nocturnal surge of ADH is significantly blunted. The hormonal signal that says slow down, conserve water, it is nighttime becomes weaker and less reliable. And then there is a third layer, sleep architecture itself. Deep, restorative sleep, the stages where your body repairs itself, is the stage of sleep during which the body is most tolerant of bladder filling without awakening. But when you have been woken up once or twice already in the night, your sleep becomes lighter. You cycle through more shallow stages, and in shallow sleep, even a modestly full bladder triggers waking. I also want to name something that the clinical literature is unambiguous about, but that rarely comes up in patient conversations. Nocturia is a falls risk, significant falls risk. Getting up in the dark, often in the first disoriented seconds after waking from sleep, often with blood pressure that has not yet stabilized to the upright position, in a bathroom that may have a slippery floor. The impact on daytime function, on mood, on cognitive sharpness, on the ability to exercise and socialize and simply enjoy being alive, all of it is real. Here is what this looks like in practice. The target is to consume the large majority of your daily fluid intake, roughly 2/3 to 3/4 of it, before 2 in the afternoon. This means starting the day with a full glass of water before coffee, drinking consistently through the morning, having a full glass with lunch, and then beginning to taper. Between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, you are in a moderate zone, sipping rather than drinking freely. After 4 o'clock, you shift to minimal intake, small sips as needed to manage thirst and take any medications. Now, the hidden dimension of this habit is what I call covert diuretics. Not everyone is aware that certain common substances beyond alcohol, which most people already know is diuretic, have significant diuretic effects that are relevant here. Caffeine is the obvious one, but the impact of even decaffeinated coffee and black tea is often underappreciated. Caffeine's diuretic effect is well established, but even the non-caffeine compounds in coffee have mild diuretic properties. More importantly, many patients are taking medications that have diuretic effects and taking them at times of day that maximize nocturnal urine production. Thiazide diuretics, loop diuretics, and some blood pressure medications taken in the evening will predictably drive nighttime urine production. If you are taking any diuretic medication in the late afternoon or evening, I would strongly encourage you to ask your prescribing physician whether that medication could safely be taken earlier in the day. This is a conversation worth having. For many patients, simply moving the timing of an existing medication produces a meaningful reduction in nocturia without changing anything else. The second habit addresses the fluid pooling mechanism I described earlier, and it is both simpler and more immediately effective than most people expect. The goal is to mobilize the fluid that has accumulated in your legs during the day before you lie down, while you are still awake, and your kidneys can process it during waking hours rather than sleeping ones. The specific intervention is leg elevation, not passively putting your feet on a footstool while watching television. Deliberate angled elevation, your legs raised above the level of your heart, for a minimum of 30 minutes in the late afternoon or early evening. The ideal window is between 3 and 6 in the afternoon because this gives your kidneys time to process the mobilized fluid during the 2 to 4 hours before you intend to sleep. If you elevate your legs at 7 and go to bed at 10, your kidneys may still be processing that fluid when you lie down. Earlier is better. The mechanics are straightforward. When your legs are elevated above heart level, gravity assists venous return. The fluid that spent the day pooling in your ankles and calves moves back into central circulation much more efficiently than it would if you simply stood up or lay flat. Your kidneys respond to this increased circulating volume and produce urine. You urinate during the evening, and then when you actually lie down to sleep, there is significantly less reserve fluid in your legs to redistribute, which means your kidneys receive significantly less of a late surge of fluid to process overnight. For patients with significant venous insufficiency or chronic lower limb edema, I also recommend considering compression stockings worn during the day, from first thing in the morning until the late afternoon when you do your elevation session. The stockings work by preventing the pooling from occurring in the first place. They are not glamorous, and many patients resist them initially, but the data on their effectiveness for reducing nocturia related to venous insufficiency is actually quite solid. If you have swelling in your legs and ankles that is worse by late afternoon, this combination, daytime compression followed by late afternoon elevation, may be the most impactful single change you can make. I want to take a few minutes here to answer a question that comes up constantly in the context of nocturia, and that is the question of sodium and salt. Many patients have been told to restrict sodium for blood pressure or heart health reasons, and they assume that sodium restriction will automatically reduce nighttime urination. The relationship is more nuanced than that. Excess sodium intake does drive fluid retention, but it drives it throughout the body, not selectively into the bladder. And some degree of sodium restriction is appropriate for many older adults for cardiovascular reasons. But very aggressive sodium restriction, particularly in older adults who are also taking diuretic medications, can create electrolyte imbalances that are genuinely dangerous. I have seen patients who significantly reduced their sodium intake, combined it with an evening diuretic, and ended up in the emergency department with hyponatremia, dangerously low sodium levels, with symptoms including confusion, weakness, and in severe cases, seizures. The interaction between fluid intake, sodium intake, diuretic medication, and kidney function in older adults is complex. Please do not make aggressive dietary sodium changes without discussing them with your physician in the context of your complete medication list. The third habit is the one I promised you at the beginning, the one that the vast majority of seniors are doing backwards. And I want to give it the full explanation it deserves, because without understanding the biology, it tends to sound like minor lifestyle advice when it is actually addressing a foundational hormonal mechanism. We discussed earlier that antidiuretic hormone, ADH, is supposed to increase at night, telling the kidneys to slow down urine production during sleep. The question I want to answer now is, what controls the timing of that ADH surge? What tells your body it is nighttime and triggers that hormonal shift? The answer lies primarily in two environmental signals: light and temperature. Your body's master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, if you want the technical term, synchronizes your circadian rhythm to the external environment primarily through light signals detected by the eyes. Bright light, especially light in the blue wavelength spectrum, signals to the master clock that it is daytime. The clock responds by suppressing melatonin and suppressing the cascade of hormonal changes, including the ADH surge, that prepare the body for sleep. This system evolved when the only blue spectrum light in the evening was the setting sun, which fades gradually and signals the transition to night. We have completely disrupted that signal. Your body's master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, if you want the technical term, synchronizes your circadian rhythm to the external environment primarily through light signals detected by the eyes. Bright light, especially light in the blue wavelength spectrum, signals to the master clock that it is daytime. The clock responds by suppressing melatonin and suppressing the cascade of hormonal changes, including the ADH surge, that prepare the body for sleep. This system evolved when the only blue spectrum light in the evening was the setting sun, which fades gradually and signals the transition to night. We have completely disrupted that signal. The average person over 65 today spends their evening hours in rooms lit with LED lighting, which is disproportionately blue spectrum, looking at a television screen, a tablet, or a smartphone that delivers blue wavelength light directly to the retina at close range. Every minute of that exposure is sending a message to the master clock that says it is still daytime. The ADH surge is suppressed. The kidneys do not receive the hormonal instruction to slow down. And then the person goes to bed at 10, and their kidneys are still running on daytime mode for 1 to 2 hours into the sleep period, producing urine at near daytime rates into a bladder that is trying to rest. Here is what doing this correctly looks like. The goal is to begin the circadian transition at least 90 minutes before your intended sleep time. This means shifting your environment from blue spectrum light to warm amber spectrum light, which does not trigger the daytime signal in the master clock. You can do this with warm-colored bulbs in your bedroom and reading area, with amber-tinted glasses if you must use screens in the evening, or simply by dimming the lights in your home significantly in the last 2 hours before bed. The transition should be gradual and noticeable. Your environment in the hour before bed should feel meaningfully dimmer and warmer in color than your environment in the early evening. You can do this with warm-colored bulbs in your bedroom and reading area, with amber-tinted glasses if you must use screens in the evening, or simply by dimming the lights in your home significantly in the last 2 hours before bed. The transition should be gradual and noticeable. Your environment in the hour before bed should feel meaningfully dimmer and warmer in color than your environment in the early evening. The second environmental signal is temperature. Core body temperature follows a circadian pattern that closely tracks the sleep-wake cycle. In the late evening, core temperature is supposed to fall. This drop is part of the physical signal that initiates sleep and the hormonal cascade accompanying it. The modern bedroom, often kept at a constant temperature by central heating or air conditioning, can blunt this signal. Studies consistently show that people sleep more deeply and experience more appropriate nocturnal hormonal patterns in rooms that are slightly cool, in the range of 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. If your bedroom is warmer than that, your body may not be receiving the temperature drop signal that helps consolidate the nighttime hormonal shift, including the ADH surge. When you combine these three habits, front-loaded hydration with strategic reduction after 4 in the afternoon, late afternoon leg elevation to mobilize pooled fluid during waking hours, and deliberate circadian entrainment through light and temperature management, you are addressing the 3 primary physiological mechanisms that drive nocturia in older adults simultaneously. No single habit is complete on its own. The hydration strategy reduces the total volume your kidneys have to process overnight. The elevation strategy removes the reservoir of fluid that redistributes when you lie down. And the circadian habit restores, as much as behaviorally possible, the hormonal environment in which the kidneys naturally slow their output during sleep. Most patients who implement all 3 consistently report meaningful improvement within 2 to 3 weeks. Not perfection, this is not a cure for conditions like overflow incontinence, prostate enlargement, or diabetes insipidus, all of which require direct medical management. But for the majority of older adults whose nocturia is primarily driven by the mechanisms I have described, these changes reduce the number of nighttime wakings, improve sleep depth, and in many cases eliminate the problem of the bladder waking them at all during the first sleep cycle, which is the deepest and most restorative period of the night. I want to name one additional consideration before I close, because it applies to a significant subset of older adults and is frequently overlooked. If you have been told you have sleep apnea, or if you snore heavily and wake frequently with no clear reason, untreated sleep apnea is a direct driver of nocturia through a separate mechanism. During apnea events, when breathing pauses and oxygen levels drop, the heart experiences pressure changes that trigger the release of atrial natriuretic peptide, a hormone that directly signals the kidneys to produce urine. In patients with undiagnosed or untreated sleep apnea, treating the apnea alone can dramatically reduce nocturia without any other behavioral change. If you have never been evaluated for sleep apnea and you are waking multiple times per night, I would add that evaluation to your list of conversations with your physician. Here is what I want you to take away today. Nocturia in older adults is not a simple bladder problem, and it is not simply an inevitable consequence of aging. It is the product of identifiable, addressable physiological mechanisms. Fluid redistribution from the legs at night, a blunted nocturnal ADH surge, and the chronic disruption of the circadian signals that should trigger that hormonal shift. The 3 habits we covered today, strategic hydration timing, late afternoon leg elevation, and deliberate light and temperature management in the evening, address each of those mechanisms directly and concurrently. They are not quick fixes, and they require consistency over at least 2 weeks to show their full effect. But they are grounded in physiology, they are free, and they have no side effects. If this video helped you understand something you have been living with for years and never had properly explained, share it. Send it to a family member who has been dismissing their nocturia as just getting old. Share it in a group for older adults or caregivers. The information exists. Getting it to the people who need it is the part that requires your help. And if you want to continue this conversation, leave a comment. Tell me how long this has been going on for you, whether you have tried any of these approaches before, and what your biggest question is. I will be reading. Take good care of yourselves.